If you entrust your heart to God and move when he says move, then the people who you share your heart with have to answer to God for what they do with it. He will absolutely handle it. And how he handles it isn't really your business. You may never even get to see how he handled it. But all that matters is your hands are clean. You'll mess around trying to get your lick back, and the spiritual karma meant for them will fall on you. This is Bedtime Stories, Grownup Edition, Resurrection, Part 17. When we left off, True had had several good nights' sleep in the arms of her man. She was still holding out, though. And if anybody was being tortured, it was her, because Big Wood was cool as a fan. Between keeping her fed and helping her sleep, he'd been balancing giving her time to herself with walking her into conversations about her experiences while he was deceased. He didn't push, he didn't prod. He just engaged in active listening, sprinkled their conversations with commentary, encouraged True to open up. And when they weren't eating, sleeping, or talking, he was completing his rehab or helping her to prepare for their impending bundle of joy, washing clothes and linens, sterilizing bottles and pacifiers, putting together baby furniture, and praying for a safe delivery. Any of that sounds familiar? You already know. True was nesting, and it was almost time. Both Miss Charlotte and Indira had noticed, and they both said as much. Everybody was on Genesis watch, and True was nervous as hell. When Big Wood asked, "You ready?" True said, "No. Are you?" Big Wood said, "Hell, yeah." Then he used the tablet to say, "If I could go in there and get her myself, I would." And True just burst out laughing. True knew how Big Wood felt about the fact that they were having a baby and weren't yet married. But she wanted to see if his sentiments had changed. So she asked him, "Other than having been here, what's one thing that you would change about this experience?" And Big Wood, reading between the lines, said, "Whenever you ready." True asked, "Whenever I'm ready for what?" Big Wood chuckled and said, "Marriage." True said, "You're not even my boyfriend. How you gonna be my husband?" Big Wood used the tablet to ask, "When in the hell did we break up?" And True said, "When you died." Wood asked, "That's how you feel, little mama?" True said, "We've been skirting around the issue for days. You've been holding things down, and I appreciate that. The minute you decided to play with my heart, my life, and my future, our life together ended. And I know you don't want to admit it, but neither of us is good at second chances." We'll use the tablet to say, "We ain't got to be good at it. We got one. All we got to do is take it." Meanwhile, in New York, Bosch's scheme had been going exceptionally well. He was several days into the sting operation on the Greens, and now he was working on Mrs. Green. Days earlier, Amber's father, Donald Green, had loaded Bosch up in his vehicle, assembled a team, and allowed Bosch to lead them back to the house, where he claimed he and Amber had been held. The team surveilled the scene, and it was obvious that the Long Island house was very much so still occupied. The people behind the kidnapping were scouring the area, where the cell phone that Bosch had taken off one of their soldiers had last pinged before he disabled the location service. Bosch had pretended to be frustrated and upset when Mr. Green told him that they weren't just going to rush in and attempt to rescue his daughter, and Mr. Green had to actually calm him down and explain his reasoning. He said, "Obviously, my daughter's still alive. Otherwise, they would have cleared out by now. You can't possibly want her back more than I do. I'm her father, but I've got to go about this smart. Last thing I want to do is risk the lives of my men walking into a situation that they don't have enough information about, and risk my daughter's life at the same time. Believe me, there's more than one way to skin a cat. Be patient. If what you said is true and they're after me, then I'm going to show you how I get down. I'm going to turn the tables on them." When Bosch asked what he was going to do about the people who were really behind this, Mr. Green said, "First, I need to prove that that's the truth. I still have business interests that I need to protect, and I can't allow my emotions to have me flying off the handle. I can see that you really do care about my daughter, but you're going to need to have some patience, because this isn't going to happen as quickly as you might like. I got to have all my ducks in a row before I flip on these people. I've got to be able to prove that they've already flipped on me." Bosch, appearing reluctant, said, "I just don't know how much more of this I could take. If it was up to me, I'd get my girl back, we'd skip town, and get as far away from this mess as possible." Mr. Green said, "Believe me, I understand. Look, you obviously can't go back to your place. They're going to look for you there. And while you aren't necessarily the kind of man I would choose for my daughter, you're clearly a stand-up guy. So how about this? You help me out, I'll help you out. I got a spot in the city that's empty right now. You can crash there. I'll make sure you have everything you need until all of this is over. Shortly thereafter, Donald Green put Bosch up in a condo in the city like he promised. He had one of his men give Bosch a doctor, some clothes, a cell phone, and when he was all patched up, cleaned up, and fed, he showed him photos of the men who'd been seen entering and exiting the house where Bosch said he and Amber had been held for days, and the men who'd been seen scouring the area looking for Bosch. Bosch gave him the names that he'd heard the men call one another, identified who was calling the shots and who was the worker bee. And after a few days, with the information Bosch had provided in their own surveillance, Donald Green's men were able to comfortably say that they knew exactly who was behind the kidnapping. Danny Briggs and the Briggs organization. Danny Briggs was under significant pressure. The longer it took for him to produce a higher up in the international trafficking organization for Q, the deeper Q was going to get him in the mess that his alliance with the international trafficking organization had created. He'd already implicated one of his soldiers in the operation to off Michelle Devereaux in Paris. And now he was going to make it look like that his organization was not only responsible for Amber's death, but that the kidnapping was orchestrated on behalf of the international trafficking organization. An organization that Bosch's background work had proven to be directly connected to Donald Green. Sincere had no clue that his New York jump-off was not only connected, but she was connected in the worst way. And the crimes that they'd committed together were clearly in her DNA. But Bosch couldn't afford for Donald Green to find out that Amber was dead before he had an opportunity to get more information that the 5 families could use. He was entirely too skilled to be foolish enough to use the phone that Donald Green had provided him to make contact with his boss. And since he knew that Mr. Green would want to keep him close, so he would provide him with lodging, he and Stacks had already identified several potential locations where he would be put up and created a plan for how Bosch would make contact. So once he was settled in the condo and left to his own devices, he threw on some clothes to appear incognito, grabbed a notepad and a pen, and headed to a local park. He knew that Donald Green would have people watching him and that they would follow his every move. So he made it a point to not look like a professional. He was looking around and looking all nervous, allowing himself to be observed, emotional. And then he opened up the notepad and started writing. He'd write for a while, rip the page out, ball it up, and throw it into the lake. Cry a little bit, wipe his eyes, write a little bit, rip the page out, ball it up, and throw it in the lake. Around the 3rd or 4th time of this little routine, he threw a paper that didn't quite make it to the lake, closed his notepad, stood up, and walked back to the condo. And as expected, he was followed back. When the coast was clear, one of the Lopez soldiers took a stroll through that same park, bent over to tie his shoe, and just happened to pick up that piece of paper that didn't make it into the lake. And the following day, Bosch did it all again. But this time, he didn't just take a notebook and a pen. He also took a grocery bag with some stale bread, because he was going to feed the ducks. And when he headed back to the condo, he wasn't empty-handed. He still had that grocery bag. It just wasn't stale bread in it. At the same time, in Denton, Texas, Angela was doing everything that she could to keep all the balls that she was juggling in the air. Not only were her children involved in some scheme, but her husband was in Puerto Rico, potentially in danger. She and Regina were on the outs. LJ was making 0 efforts to save his marriage, and her brand new chief of operations had just told her that she was going to need a leave of absence. Angela said, "The timing of this is terrible, Natalia. But I understand that you got to do what you got to do. Let me see if I can enlist Liza's help temporarily. If she's amenable, would you at least be open to collaborating with her a few times a week? That way you can remain up to speed and she won't have to do all the heavy lifting. She may not even agree to come back temporarily, but at least if I have that in my back pocket, I might have a chance." When Natalia agreed, Angela said, "Thank you. Now, how are things going? Do you need anything? Is there anything I can do to support you?" Natalia said, "I appreciate you asking, and hopefully you won't regret it." Angela said, "Oh boy." Natalia said, No, it's not anything bad, necessarily. I guess I just need some relationship advice." Angela said, "Well, I should be able to help with that. What's up?" And then Natalia told Angela all about what had been going on over the past few days. Natalia had learned that she would not be hearing directly from Saint. No phone calls, no letters, no visits. Other than what she could decipher from code, she wouldn't get any of her questions answered either. Not about what he wanted her to do about Sincere, what he wanted her to tell his siblings, and certainly not about his relationship with Summer. He actually expected her to practically run his business and handle all of his finances without even having a conversation about it. and without knowing how long this arrangement would last. According to his criminal attorney, the process of clearing his name could take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. And she hadn't been his girlfriend a good 2 weeks before somebody, presumably sincere, dropped dime on him and got him detained in Paris. Natalia said, now, I understand that with his future and his family's organization in limbo, he doesn't want the people he cares about under the microscope. Angela said, he's a legitimate businessman, so his primary concern is his business. Natalia said, exactly that. Believe me, I get it. I swear I do. I guess where the issue comes in is, without agreeing to all of this, I couldn't get access to his system, his financials. But because of Regina's position as my attorney, she was given some latitude and allowed to review a lot of the files. From everything that she's seen in our discussions, it looks like this man has been taking care of several women and children. And taking on this role means that I'm going to be continuing that for 6 months to 2 years without any explanation from him. I don't know who these women are, and I've got Regina looking into it right now, but I've already agreed to it. Now, she was able to get the paperwork updated to include some clauses that give me a way out of all of this if I'm not too pleased with what she finds. But I'm trying to prepare myself for the worst case scenario. Nothing about this suggests that he's taking care of family and friends, Angela. So I don't get why he would even ask me to do this, Angela asked. And what's Regina saying? Natalia said, oh, she thinks he got a whole bunch of women and some illegitimate children. And he somehow thinks that I'm too stupid to figure it out. Angela said, oh my God. Natalia said, that's what I said. Natalia was assuming that Angela's reaction was for the same reason that she was having that reaction. But she'd assumed wrong. Angela could not tell that girl that Regina was overly suspicious of what Saint had going on, because she had BS going on in her own life. And she was a suspicious individual by nature. So Angela had to figure out a way to get Natalia to choose to give Saint the benefit of the doubt, sight unseen, without throwing her best friend on the outs under a bus. She said, is that the man that you know Saint to be? Natalia said, I'm still getting to know him, so I can't say for sure what kind of man he is. Angela said, from what you know about him so far, would he really strike you as the type of man to have multiple women, illegitimate children all over the place? Or is it more likely that he's taking care of family and friends? Natalia said, that's just it. He doesn't have family that would need his money, and I only know of one friend. Then she told Angela about what she knew about Saint's friendship with Summer. She didn't name her. She didn't spill all the beans about Summer's assault. But she gave her the gist. Angela said, digging into his finances isn't snooping because he's giving you responsibility over those finances. The story you tell yourself about what you find, though, is going to speak to who you are, not to who he is. The mindset you have going into this is going to have a great impact on how you see the evidence that's presented to you. If you go into it with a mindset that's cynical, distrusting, with very little information to support it, assuming the worst and expecting to find just that, you are going to find the dirt you're looking for, whether it really exists or not. Things are not always what they seem, but what they seem is about how you think. So you tell me, which line of thinking is more reasonable? That of all the people he knows who are already in business, he chose you because he somehow thought that while you'd handle his business and do a good job, you'd also be too stupid to put 2 and 2 together and figure out that he'd been spreading his baby juice all around? Natalia chuckled and said, baby juice? Angela said, stay with me now. Not only would you be too stupid to figure that out, but you'd also be so naive and desperate to have a man that you'd help him take care of his brood, hold him down while he's in the slammer. And because you are so happy to have been chosen, that you'd overlook the fact that Natalia said, all right, I get it. Angela said, okay, good. So is that more likely, or is it more likely that he knew exactly who he was giving this job to, exactly what it might look like, and he was willing to risk all of that because he trusts you, and you can trust him too? I've been with a man who I couldn't trust, Natalia, and I willfully chose to turn a blind eye to his deceptions and his disloyalty. While I could have allowed that situation to make me jaded, I chose not to. Instead, I learned the lesson. I am now with a man who I trust without reservation. And there have absolutely been situations where another woman wouldn't have trusted him. In the end, when the situations were over with, I'd learned that I was right to have trusted him. Now, which one of those 2 men do you think I regret trusting? Natalia asked, is this a trick question? The first one, of course. Angela said, it's definitely a trick question because the answer is neither of them. If you operate under the assertion that trust, respect, love are all things that are earned, then you'll never receive them and you'll never give them. Natalia said, say what? Angela said, you didn't mishear me. Trust, love, respect, those aren't things that someone can earn. You can do everything right according to your own standards. And if the standards that another person has set for themselves or for you are in any way different, then you will never earn their love, respect, or their trust. You can spend your whole life trying to, though. And when it's all said and done, you'll find out that you've been wasting your time. And so have they. I've learned to respect people simply because God chose to wake them up this morning. And there is nothing that they can do, not even disrespecting me, that can result in me disrespecting them. Because I am respectful. And if God woke them up this morning, He intended for me to respect them. Their failure to do the same is between them and God. I love people because I was called to do that, which means that even when they're unlovable, my love is still freely given. That doesn't mean that I sit around and allow people to run over me. I can absolutely love a fool from a distance. I can walk away from a relationship that doesn't serve me without withdrawing either my respect or my love. Now, trust is an animal of a completely different kind. Natalia said, tell me about it. I've blindly given a man my trust before, only to find out that he was a snake of the worst kind. Angela said, and I'm sure he showed you who he was, and you chose not to believe him. Natalia said, well, then there's that. Angela said, the thing about trust is it's also freely given, but not haphazardly. I get to know people, how they think, how they move, their heart posture. And based on the preponderance of the evidence, I choose whether to be in relationship with them or not. And if so, what kind of relationship? And once in relationship, I trust them as much or as little as who they are dictates. I don't run around looking for proof that I shouldn't trust them, while also not disregarding concrete proof that I shouldn't. Once they have my trust, what they do with it is on them. Now, if at some point after they have it, their behavior gives me just cause to withdraw it, I don't regret having trusted them because I'm not responsible for what they do. I can't hold myself responsible for situations where someone has tricked me, where they've deceived me, where they've pretended to be someone that they weren't, or behaved in ways that were untrustworthy without me knowing. That relieves me of the burden of having to try to keep up with their every move. Natalia said, now wait a minute. My mother always told me, trust, but verify. Angela said, and she isn't wrong. But how far are you willing to go to verify? Can you imagine receiving photos in the mail from an anonymous sender? And those photos are of your man's Johnson in another woman's hands? Natalia said, oh my God, that happened with your first husband? Angela said, no, with Q. Eventually, I did learn that the photos were staged. But I had to decide long before I found out the truth, whether I was going to trust the man that I knew or the photos in my hand. After all I'd been through with my first husband, I had every reason to choose to believe my own eyes. And most people would not have blamed me if I did. But I chose to believe him long before I had the proof. Natalia asked, but how? Even the Bible tells us to guard our own hearts. Angela said, it says to guard it, not protect it. Only God can protect your heart. You can only know what you know and make decisions based on what you know, not what you don't. Other people might compromise you, but God never will. If you entrust your heart to God and move when He says move, then the people who you share your heart with have to answer to God for what they do with it. He will absolutely handle it. And how He handles it isn't really your business. You may never even get to see how He handled it. But all that matters is your hands are clean. You'll mess around trying to get your lick back, and the spiritual karma meant for them will fall on you. Natalia said, now that I agree with. I'd just rather walk away early and save myself the trouble. Angela said, and that's perfectly fine when you don't love someone. But don't the people you love deserve your effort? Natalia said, yes, but this is hard. Angela said, oh, I know. Please don't think that I think it's easy. I am fully aware of the fact that it is easier for me than for some because I don't have this insatiable need to prove whether I should or shouldn't trust someone. That's precisely why I will never replace my uncle. Skepticism is a necessity in that line of work. I stick to what I'm good at. That's hair care and skin care. And I dibble and dabble where my skill set can be useful. But my passion is life coaching. When you change how you think about things, it changes how you feel about those things, and it makes it a whole lot easier for you to have peace, no matter how those things turn out. When your trust stops being a moving piece on a chessboard, your relationships stop being a game. Trust people to be exactly who they've shown themselves to be. And when something that they say, something that they do, something that you suspect doesn't line up with that, it's okay to question it. But people who you know deserve the benefit of the doubt. That means, in and of itself, that I know you. I know who and how you are. And based on what I know of you, these words, these actions, what it looks like, is not in alignment with that. So absent any other evidence that disproves what I know about you, I am going to continue to trust that you are precisely who I believe you are. And if it comes out later on that I was wrong, I won't have any regrets. Natalia said, but what if they turn out to be a horrible person? What if they do horrible things? Angela said, I trust God. I trust his protection and the power that he's given me over my own life. And I trust God with my heart. And I trust people to be whomever they are. Without having all of the information you thought you needed, you knew who Sincere was and who he wasn't. And before you knew who Saint was, you knew who Saint was. So let's talk about what you know. What does Saint care about? Then Natalia told Angela that Saint cared about helping people, that a large part of his business was about giving people second chances. And Angela asked, does that include some single parents? Does it include some struggling families? When Natalia said yes, Angela asked, you said that he's been funding college funds and limited trusts. I have limited trusts for my children, funds that they won't be able to touch until they meet certain milestones. Could these accounts be for the children of the single parents and struggling families that he's been helping to get their lives back on track? Natalia said, I didn't even think of that. Angela said, of course you didn't, because when you look for dirt, Natalia finished the sentence saying, you'll always find it. Angela said, I didn't stay on the phone with you all day, so we'll have to discuss why finding the dirt you looked for doesn't mean you should have looked for it some other time, child. Experience tells me that it does not. I had lots of reasons to question my first husband, and I didn't. I should have, but the likelihood is he would have just lied. And without digging, I still wouldn't have had the answers that I sought. In the end, I didn't have to do that. God made sure that information fell in my lap. And the truth is, had I discovered what he was up to only a few months earlier, I wouldn't have had my son Angel. But that's a story for another day. Now, this best friend of his, have you conversed with her? When Natalia said she had, Angela asked, do you and her have a good enough rapport for you to just ask her if Saint's been supporting her financially? Natalia said, I think so. Angela said, then what the hell is stopping you from asking her? That's not prying. That's being fiscally responsible. And Natalia just chuckled. Angela said, baby, a man who has something to hide, hides it. And Saint knows exactly what his accounts show. Is the girl living in the lap of luxury? Natalia said, no. Angela said, now think about it. Natalia said, it might not be what it looks like. I mean, the girl drives a mommy mobile. I didn't spot any luxury anywhere in her home. Then what Natalia didn't say, because she learned to be choosy with her words when talking on the phone, was that the likelihood was high that the house was in Miss Miracle's name. It was in the same neighborhood that Saint and his siblings grew up in, and the same one that Summer had grown up in. Natalia thought to herself, that house is probably Summer's childhood home. And if Saint is taking care of her, and she knows about it, then why she work so hard? She got a full-time job that she goes to every day. And while her Nissan Rogue is newish, a woman who's being put up will certainly enjoy the benefits of a G-Wagon or Range Rover. Natalia said, well, clearly you and Regina have very different ideas about trust. Angela said, tell me about it. You have no idea how much I wish I could have this same conversation with her. I love that girl with my whole heart. And right now, she's dealing with something. Don't let what she's dealing with spill over on you. Because hurt people hurt people. You that one friend who remembered the version of me that I buried and brought her back gently without